First taste of a cup of freshly made coffee when it's real. Oh my God, that first mouthful is just so good. The first mouthful in the morning of your first coffee is just the best.
I only ever have one. It's not particularly good for us.
Oh, well,
I have had years off it, and then I bought my own espresso machine 4 years ago and never looked back. But I do have one a day, and I've had mine, and you're right, it was delicious. But it is really bad for you.
Is it? Yeah, but so many things are really bad for you, aren't they?
That's true. They are. Yeah. So
everything from the toaster apparently through to coffee, through to butter, through to I don't know what. I mean, honestly, if you spent your whole time, wife worried.
I think butter's made a comeback. It's all right to have butter right now.
Yeah, I'd rather have butter than margarine. I hate the smell of margarine.
Oh, margarine! It's grim. It's from the inside of the scrapings of petroleum or something. We shouldn't be touching margarine. Yeah, I know. Exactly.
Welcome to Own It, Your Business and Your Life, with Nicola Cairncross and Judith Morgan. In this podcast, we're going to cover everything you need to embrace to become a successful entrepreneur, marketing, money, and much, much more. How to create a business doing just what you love. How to own it, your business and your life. This one will be fast, funny, feisty, and very lively. So sit back and enjoy the show. Judith, what have you been up to this week then?
Well, Nicola, a little bit. I've got a mini rant, but I'm going to start with a reflection.
Okay.
Yesterday was my oldest school friend's 59th birthday. I'm already 59, and tomorrow is a friend I've only known for, say, 40 years, not 50 like the other one. She turns 60 tomorrow. She's the first of my contemporaries to turn 60. And next year, 2015, all of us turn 60. And the reflection is, where did that go? You've got both loads of time and none. It passes in the blink of an eye. I mean, I don't have children, as you know, but if you said to Phoebe and Nelson, honestly, one day you'll wake up tomorrow and you'll be 60 like Judith, they wouldn't believe you because their whole lives are stretched out ahead of them. But, as you get on a bit, you realise how fast life moves. I mean, where did 2014 go?
I know. It is frightening, isn't it? And it does definitely move faster the older you get.
Yeah, once your egg timer's the other way up, a bit like your petrol gauge in the car, it goes faster in the second half. Doesn't it?
What is going on with that? That is really mysterious.
No, darling, it's an illusion.
Well, I think it's something to do with the percentages. So when your petrol gauge is completely full, it means the engine's really full. But when it goes, and I can't even articulate how my brain accounts for this.
They've done it in cars on purpose. But if you think about real life, you think you have time, but you don't.
Yes. And in fact, we were standing in one of my favourite locals last night with Phoebe and talking to someone about their mother. And you could tell Phoebe wasn't that interested. And then he said, of course, she used to be a model. And that sort of pricked Phoebe's ears up a bit. And we were talking about this woman who'd travelled around the world. She was a top model. She married well. She ended up investing in property. She sounds like our kind of girl, Judith, And she's 82 now, and she's still, for going down the pub on a Sunday for a Guinness and running her property portfolio and runs a sheep farm, which is a hobby farm apparently, but it's still got plenty of sheep on it. So my friend Marlene obviously runs an upmarket nursing home, rest home, where lots of people go if they're very lucky and live, out in the lap of luxury. But the thing and she always talks to the old people. She says, you never know what their story is and what their life's been like. And listening to this story about this man's mother, who was a model and travelled the world and had a really marvellous time, I just thought how poignant it is that we're all going to end up in a place where perhaps surrounded by people who don't know what we've done, and how much more important that makes it to make a bigger dent on the universe as you possibly can while you've got time.
Yeah, I mean, I think I said, where did that go? And we think we've got time that we haven't, but actually we have. I'm 60 next year, so what? I might live till I'm 100. I've got 40 years. I can make 4 dents. I can make 40 dents on the world, Nicola.
Well, let's hope we're making a little dent with this podcast. That'd be nice, wouldn't
Yes.
it? So what's your rant? What's your rant about?
Oh, it's about the X Factor.
Oh dear, I've loved it. So go on.
I've quite enjoyed it. I've quite enjoyed it, and just like coffee, I've had years off from the X Factor. They published the voting results the day after. I don't know if you saw that.
Yes, I did see that, yes.
And basically what that shows you is how much they've misled us in the last 8 weeks.
Why? What do you mean? Why?
Well, because they know those voting results week on week. They even know it before deadlock.
I don't think the artists know it, do they?
No, the artists never know it, but the panel knows it.
Yeah.
Simon knows it.
That affects their critiques and things.
No, I think it affects. What they know is who we are all voting for, and what their agenda is to push the winner they want. So even though they knew in week 4, week 5, week 6, week 7, week 8, week 9, and week 10 that we all wanted Ben, they kept telling us that Fleur was the best.
But I didn't want Ben. I used all of my 5 votes every single week for Andrea.
No, you didn't want him. That's not the point. The point is the world wanted, the nation wanted Ben, and Simon Cowell knew that. But he kept pushing at us his own agenda. All I'm saying, and I don't blame him, he's a businessman, okay? And I know that Fleur is the most commercially recordable, and I know that Andrea will get a contract, but the nation wanted Ben. And maybe there would be no tension at all. Obviously, I understand why they can't tell us that in advance. But I feel duped, conned, manipulated and misled.
Oh, well, I'm really sorry you feel like that, because I don't feel like that at all. I feel like even though the panel or Simon knows what's going on with the numbers, it's still giving Fleur and Andrea, and in fact everyone who gets into the final, a chance of having a career, which they wouldn't have if they didn't go through that.
No, and I know you don't have to win. In fact, often it's better that you don't win and get a career. And I think that the boy that did win will be infinitely more manipulable and malleable, because he'll be so grateful to have a career that he'll do whatever Simon tells him. Whereas we know some of the more creative people have pulled away or been sacked by Simon because they won't do his bidding. And I'm a big fan of Simon Cowell. I really like him, which is probably why I watch the programme. But they misrepresent the truth to us, Nicola.
See, I feel a little bit like that when Steve used to tell me that it was all rigged. I don't actually care, because it's such great entertainment, and it's great entertainment of a kind that I find really enjoyable and positive and uplifting and all that stuff. So I don't actually care about the details there. I'm perfectly happy.
Yes, to me, misrepresentation, wholesale misrepresentation is not a detail, I think. All it does is it tinges it. And obviously we're not supposed to know the results in advance, and I take that. But I really look forward to seeing what we've all voted on the next day. And I think it was, from the voting, it was always a one-horse race. Maybe if I was having this conversation with Simon Cowell, he would say, well, actually, Judith, if you'd known that wouldn't have been such great entertainment. It's the will he, won't he, will she, won't she, is the exciting bit. And actually, when I cast my 5 votes on the night on the app for Ben, it was because I was desperate for him to have my votes. He didn't need my votes. He didn't need half of the votes he got, because he was streets ahead.
I know, and if we'd known that, it's not just about the voting, it's not just about who wins, it's not even any of that. It's actually listening to people singing great songs really well. And my sister would argue against that argument for a start, the singing system.
Well, I have some sympathy with her. There's a lot of crap singing, but I'm not arguing about the content of the programme for now, or discussing the content of the programme for now, because I think it's had its time as well. Actually, the audience figures are struggling, blah blah blah. But that's not the point. I think that you're right. It still has an entertainment value. Let us not be naive and pretend it doesn't matter who wins, because the whole point of it is, if you win, you get $1 million recording contract.
Yeah, but then you have to deal with Simon Cowell for the next year, much as I like him.
Yes, but if you were Ben the White Van Man from Croydon, dealing with Simon Cowell for the next year wouldn't be such a bad thing.
No, it wouldn't. And you know what? I'm going to hang on to my naivety, because I love the whole magic of it all, and it makes me cry. But I mean, Phoebe just laughs at me. She says, "You're not crying already, are you?" And it's pretty much as the musical credits are coming up, I'm blubbing, because I just love the whole aspirational element of it. I love the fact that people, the two top finalists this year had both worked their asses off for 10 years. They weren't little 16-year-olds who just swanned on with a great voice. They had really paid their dues. They'd done their 10,000 hours, and I absolutely love that.
Well, no argument with me from that point of view, actually. No. And I thought they were, despite the fact that Simon kept saying, these people are your enemies, the contestants were just three good friends who were charming to one another, and I thought that was sweet.
Yeah, I love the final dinner they had together. I was blubbing as well. Yes. I'm such a hard-nosed madam most of the time, but something about these talent shows just sets me off. And of course,
I can tell you what it is, because my best friend in Manchester put her finger right on this. It's people doing their utmost.
Yes, it's very inspirational and
it's very moving. People doing their utmost, whether it's the Olympics or the sports personality of the year or the X Factor final or the dancing, whatever it is. People doing their utmost is very moving, because we're sitting as couch potatoes thinking, oh, I'm not sure I could ever put myself through that. The risk of failure in front of the primetime television audience, all that kind of thing.
It's true. That's why Heather will never.
So they're doing it for us, aren't they? They're doing it for us.
Yeah, I suppose so. And the good news, of course, is that The Voice starts soon. Then we can start talking about that.
Well, I didn't bother with that the second year, actually. I find that quite tedious. I can't be doing with Tom Jones. It's will.i.am on it, because if he is, I might watch it. I like him.
So, my week then, moving on from the musical theme, I've been prepping for a webinar I never thought I'd do, which is Your Best Year Yet. I suddenly realised that I enjoy everyone else's how to have your best year yet, how to plan for 2015, whatever. I've been signing up for loads of those, and I've been enjoying them enormously, because even if you listen to them in the background, as it were, and you just catch one thing that makes you think a bit differently about your own year, I think it's a nice way to go into the year. And as you know, I'm not massively keen on Christmas, New Year generally, and I do like to spend my time, catching up and planning for the next year. So I've decided that I'm not going to deprive my lovely readers of my own thoughts about that. And I'm going to pull together a webinar where I'm going to genuinely share everything that's helped me this year, because 2014 has been my best year since 2010. And I think, I've learned a lot over the last 4 years, and I want to share that with my audience. I will make an offer at the end, which is that they can book themselves in to talk to me, but I'm not going to sell anything. I'm not going to, I'm just going to genuinely share every single of the tools that have made the difference for me in the last 4 years. And I'm really looking forward to doing that now.
What a really nice idea. 2014's been my best year since 2010 as well. So perhaps it's all moving on, life.
Well, and this podcast for us, it might be a celebration of the fact that we're working together again, and we've had a rough 4 years, but we both come through it. Yeah!
How nice. What a good idea. Well done.
And I had my third meeting with my potential new client this week, which was not actually with the owner of the company, but was with her operations manager, come back off his paternity leave, and I've been thrust upon him, as it were, and he's got 1 week until he then goes off on Christmas holidays, because he's just had a baby. Obviously not him, but and he was absolutely delightful as well. We got on really, really well, and I think I made him. I'm very aware that I'm not there to make more work for him. I'm there to get things moving on my end as effortlessly for him as possible, and he responded to that quite well, I think. So yes, now where am I up to with that now? Now I've got to put the legals together, which luckily I have some legals which I have modelled from my mentor, and I will see what they think of that. But I've got a nasty feeling, being lawyers, that they're going to bring their own legals back to the table.
I suspect they will, yes. That might be a good thing. That might be a good thing. It might. You might learn something from that, which would get you to change yours going forward.
Absolutely, but what they don't realise is my secret weapon here is that I worked in the music industry for several years, and I'm used to reading 150-page contracts, so they won't get.
Oh well, yes, there's that. Yes.
Okay, so what's fueled your fire this week then, Judith?
Touching on something you mentioned last week, it was listening to myself on the Natural Born Coaches podcast and remembering Nicola, what fun it is to build a business. So what he wanted to ask me about was, building a coaching business over the last 10 or 12 years. But when somebody asks you questions like that and you think back, oh, now what did I do? It reminded me, a bit like you saying about your 2014, best year yet podcast, where you're going to share with people what you've learned this year. When you look back, back. And that's an essential part of that best year yet process, is looking back so that it informs looking forward. I just thought, what fun it's been. I mean, it's been hard work, damned hard work, and I think I make that point somewhere. But, it's extraordinary fun, isn't it? Because you are, not every day, but we are testing ourselves all the time.
When you look back on it, you forget the bits in between where you're not sure and you're not, you forget the uncertainty bits. I suppose if I read my journal, I would be able to revisit those, but it's not something I'm very keen to do. But so you just remember the dots, don't you? You remember, I did that, and then I did that, and then that led to that, and then that led to that. And we talked about dots and all
we
that
did
in one of our previous episodes. And my what fueled your fire this week is along a similar sort of vein. So I just wanted to make sure you'd finish that bit. Or
fabulous opportunity it is in life, having talked about being 60 and so forth. What a fabulous opportunity it is in life to be self-employed. It's character building and then some. And I just wanted to celebrate how fabulous a life opportunity I feel it's been to have been able to build, I've built lots of businesses, but my coaching business particularly I'm very proud of.
Yes, and when you think about all those other unfortunate people out there who are, I mean, I can't actually believe you're 60, Judy. You just can't, I find that quite astonishing. I can't believe that.
Nicola, darling, try being me.
And then let's hope this fire that burns within us continues to burn within us until we actually drop down, because it really is quite an astonishing thing. And I just feel so, just like you, I feel so privileged and fortunate, because when things went wrong in 2010, I did flirt briefly with the idea of going and getting a job. And I know that many of your clients flirt briefly with that idea, and some even go as far as to look on the job boards and apply for things. And yes, it's absolutely dispiriting what is available for people of our age out there. I mean, we'd be lucky to get a job stacking shelves in Sainsbury's. Whereas actually the internet has enabled us to take our talents and our flow and our creativity and create something completely new out of it. And we keep doing that. And I just find that absolutely amazing.
And I think we'll always have to keep doing that. And I don't mean you and me. I mean we, the collective self-employed we, because life moves on and the market doesn't want the same things all the time. We have to keep reinventing ourselves.
Mm. Looking back over my 2014, I realise it has been my best year for the last 4 or 5 years. I'm looking forward to doing my yearly exercise, which I do on the blog, and I also do in my journal, which is to ask myself 5 questions and then answer them as honestly as possible. And I started this, I think it was back in 2011. And the 5 questions are, and listeners might like to play along, and we'd love to hear their comments in the comments section of ownitthepodcast.com episode 005. What are my greatest achievements? What am I most proud of? And that's always nice to start, with congratulating yourself. What are my biggest disappointments? Yeah, that has been 1 or 2. It's not about my failures, it's about disappointments. So it can be anything from the way other people behave to the way you behave to the things you didn't do that you wanted to do. But it's not as harsh a word as failures. So that I like that. And what's the top 3 things I learned this year? Now, those can either be the tools you've learned to use, or the skills you've acquired, or the things you've learned about other people, or the things you've learned about yourself. This is a good one. How did I limit myself in 2014, and how can I avoid doing that again? And that's quite an interesting one, because that really prompts you to have a bit of a thought, a bit of a thunk about limiting yourself. And that's really where you can surface things like things you were afraid of, or things you didn't do that you felt, perhaps you could have done. And then how can you avoid doing that again? And that's about putting, overreacting, as Thomas Leonard used to say. So putting structures in place to avoid that happening again. And then what are my roles and goals? 12. And that's a Stephen Covey thing, isn't it? Do I want to be a business owner? Do I want to be, a podcaster? Do I want to be more of a public speaker? Just generally, what do you want your roles to be about in the next year? And I would say to not have more than 5, because, again, as Stephen Covey says, you can't cope with too many roles in life. And what are your goals for those roles? Let's just set, for the next year, let's just set a big, hairy, audacious goal. I like those ones. And that's what I do every year. And I'm looking forward to doing it this year, because I've got more to celebrate this year than I've ever had for a while. What's our client challenge of the week then, Judith?
Help, my computer isn't working.
Let's hope that's not.
I can't afford a new one immediately. I might be offline for a few weeks. What can I do to be promoting my business in the meantime?
Oh, I just can't even begin to contemplate this scenario.
Well, I know, it's quite tricky. That's why I thought it'd be quite good for us. And so this particular client of mine, it happens quite a lot actually, had the circumstances are not the same, but she'd come back from a holiday and I think she'd put her computer, I don't know whether she'd put it, anyway, it had got bumped in transit. I don't know whether it was in the hold or overhead or whatever, and it wasn't working. I think it was quite elderly to begin with. I don't know about you, but we run through a laptop about every 3 years or so, don't we?
Yeah.
So, she's offline. She's not a particularly online person, it must be said, but let's throw ourselves into this challenge. We can't communicate to the world through our computers. What can we be doing in our business while we scrape together the solution to buy a new one?
Well, as I say, this would dominate my every waking moment. I would be moving heaven and earth to get to the shop to get a new one, even if it was a Chrome.
Well, okay, so here's a few ideas then. Let me start you off.
Yeah.
You've got an iPad, so you can keep in touch with your emails.
Yep.
You can go to an internet cafe and log into your webmail if you haven't got an iPad or an iPhone.
Yeah, you can.
Whatever, a smartphone.
Even sure you've got an internet cafe.
Exactly. You can go to somebody else's house and do something from there. This lady had announced, and you've done more of this as late actually, so this wouldn't be quite so dramatic for you as you think it would be. You've done a lot more local networking, haven't you? This lady said she was going to join 4N, which you've probably heard of.
Yes.
And she told me that the good thing about 4N, and she's in your neck of the woods, was that she can go to any meeting that she likes in, I think nationally actually, but her catchment area is Sussex and Kent and Surrey or somewhere. So I think it would oblige me to think very creatively indeed, because actually my laptop is my window on the world in every sense. But is there anything you can think of now that you could do if your computer didn't work for a couple of weeks?
As I'm listening to you talk about that, it's all very well to say that one can go and work elsewhere and one can go and sit in other people's houses and things, but it completely ruins the rhythm of your day and the fact that you can't just sit down at a computer. I mean, I have had occasions when this has happened, largely not so much when the computer's broken, but when the broadband's. And so when you move into a new house, it still takes 2 weeks to get broadband, which I find absolutely infuriating and astonishing, to the point where I would now consider paying 2 weeks rent or mortgage or whatever to not have that pain, 2 weeks extra, so that by the time you actually move into a residence, there is broadband there.
I totally agree with you. And next time I move, I'm going to do that. I'm not actually moving into my new house until everything works.
There is a cheaper option, which I discovered when I moved here, which is to buy yourself a 3G dongle and, a pay-as-you-go dongle. And I found that worked really well. If 5 of us could get onto, when Irving moved to a house and something happened to my computer, I had to go and work at his place, but he had no broadband, and I just bought a dongle, and it worked very well for all 3 of us. So that there is that option. But coming back to the computer issue, yes, I think networking has got to be your best way, because the one thing that having a computer on tap does is it keeps you working at your desk, whereas going out and getting out of the building, as they call it in software startup land, getting out of the building and talking to your customers is absolutely invaluable and should be done on every occasion.
And I think what I'm realising now, us debating this, is surely the whole essence of an entrepreneur is finding the workaround. If route A is not working, what's route B? What's route C? What else could I do? What else could I do? What else could I do? It's kind of that opening up the thinking rather than closing down the thinking, which is, oh God, the Wi-Fi is not working. What am I going to do?
Well, I can't imagine that any serious entrepreneur would stop thinking, what else can I do while I'm waiting on that? Is it just that this person is quite an inexperienced entrepreneur?
No. She's all right. She's going to 4N networking. I was just thinking, well, for the rest of us, you and I particularly, who are very, online focused. I think it's just quite an interesting idea, because this lady, she wasn't struggling with it because she's not as online as you and I. But for instance, she can't move on the project that she's working on with her web designer because she can't see what the web designer wants her to see, and she can't email her about it. And I went, well, just forget about that. We'll do that when the computer's working again. Meanwhile, what else can you be doing? And I think we only had this conversation because I was available to her. You know what I mean? If she didn't have a coach, I'm sure she'd work it out for herself. But I think it's quite an interesting challenge. Is, you know, one of my major business tools is broken. It's the end of the world. No, it's not. What else could we do? And I think that sort of thinking goes with the territory and is a muscle that needs to be developed.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, I'm looking at my smartphone, which is my third backup. So I've got my desktop, then I've got my iPad. I haven't got a laptop, and I want one. And I have got a smartphone, which I do struggle to see because it isn't one of the big new iPhones, which I will get as soon as I possibly can. But the other thing is that I've totally moved everything into the cloud. When I talk to some of my clients, I get quite exasperated with them when they are using ridiculously outdated email addresses that they can only access by logging onto in a browser, rather than having all their email addresses coming into Gmail. And then they talk about, you know, the spam. Well, I don't get spam because I use Gmail, and you know, it gets rid of the spam for me. And they're just so attached to having everything on their laptops or desktops that they can't move away from those. Whereas everything of mine is in the cloud now, even though I've got, you know, a lovely Apple desktop that I'm looking at. All of which tech is insured, of course, with, I think it's Protect My Bubble or something bubble insurance company. You know, you just go on that and I think I pay something like £7 a month to protect all my gadgets. So if anything breaks down or has something horrible to happen to it, I can just go and get another one straight away. To go to an internet cafe and access everything online. And I would also be able to go and get a new laptop and immediately be up and running again. I wouldn't have to go through the pain of downloading everything and doing all that stuff.
Me too. Although I don't do it the same way as you, Dan set me up like that a few years ago because, you know, I wanted I still want the laptop lifestyle, and I nearly dropped my laptop in the briny once on holiday, and he said, well, we need to set it up where exactly that. You don't have any hardware for it, it doesn't matter, and then you go and get a new one and everything is instantly downloadable and you'll go again.
Yeah, and it's hard to break the habits because, you know, I was still downloading stuff to my desktop and then once a week uploading it to the cloud. But Sarah showed me how to just download it straight to the cloud, and it never even touches my desktop. My desktop has got 4 very tiny folders on it, and that is it, and a picture of an elephant.
Yeah, yes, and you go through. It's like a doorway. Your local computer becomes a doorway through to the virtual world.
So, word of the week then, Judith.
Fun. So, here's my slogan that goes with fun. Love it or go home. You know, why are you running a business that isn't fun? Why are you running a business you don't like? Why are you doing anything in your business that you don't love? Nicola, don't start me. You know, it's back to something we put in last week's episode a bit, which is why do you need accountability? It's got to be fun.
Yes, I would definitely be doing what I'm doing, even if I wasn't earning money from it. It would be my hobby. That's an awesome one. And so what do you do? How do you, when you find yourself doing something that isn't so much fun, and is it a scale of, you know, is there a sort of scale of 1 to 10 of funness? And if it's not over a 6, you don't, you know, you find a way to sort it, or how do you work that?
I don't have a lot of experiences of elements of my business that aren't fun. See if you can throw one at me. Throw me a curved ball, Nicola. See if you can think of something I might not think of as fun.
Ooh. No, I can't think of it.
No, exactly. I mean, let's think of things that our clients have to do in their business and they think aren't fun. Blogging. Some of my clients don't like blogging. Actually, if you don't like blogging, what are the solutions?
Actually, blogging is a challenge for me at the moment, I must say. But I'm filling that gap by creating content with podcasting, which then turns.
Well, there you go. So exactly. So if somebody says I don't like blogging, I go, well, there are probably alternatives. Let's have a look at them.
Yeah, let's talk into your computer for 20 minutes, and that turns into a monster great blog post. Yeah. If you get it transcribed.
Or why do we blog? Because we want people to visit our site. What other ways are there of getting people to visit our site?
Yeah, we could just send traffic from various paid options.
Yes, or you could do vlogging or audio blogging or social media, or, you know, what would be fun? And there's usually something. Yeah. I think it's probably the resistance to marketing in the main. You know, I don't love filing. So in the olden days, I used to force myself to do it. Now I just wait until I feel like it. And it's usually when I'm on a high from something like this, or watching Bruno Mars sing Uptown Funk, or having lentils or juice so that I feel I'm on fire. And I think, do you know what? I think I'll do the filing. Not that there's much filing anymore anyway, but what's not fun? Some things on the computer that then I outsource. I try to learn as much about my own website as possible because I love it, not because if I didn't love it, I wouldn't be learning things about my own website. I'd be outsourcing more.
Yeah.
So I just think, it's fun. Find a way for it to be fun. Notice how much fun it is as compared to commuting and going to work for somebody else. Love it, be grateful for it. And if you can't do that, go home, do something else. Let's create another business for you.
Yeah, I've realised as you're talking about the filing that my way of dealing with things that not fun for me is complicated. So there's filing is one of those things. Didn't we talk in previous episodes about how I used to do the halving trick to cope with the overwhelm of the washing? Well,
Yes.
the filing is another thing that can easily become overwhelming. And I do have a little pile of stuff that really I shouldn't have a little pile of. It should be tucked away somewhere. So what I tend to do with the filing is I simplify it again. So, for example, I've got all my receipts going into one little drop folder, which is right at the front of my filing drawer. So I just put all my receipts in that. And then once a month, I'll either do it myself or pay Phoebe to do it, which is to sort the receipts into date order and then pop them into a slippery fish and put that in my folder in the cupboard. So I tend to just think how I can simplify things. So, for example, my new client, they want me to, and I found this quite overwhelming for at least a day. They wanted me to print off the document and then sign the final page and date the first page. And then I sent that back to them. And they said, no, we need it all scanned into one PDF document. And I've got a little scanner that does one page at a time. And I thought, bloody hell, 15 pages, that's going to take me a while. And then I suddenly had the awesome idea that I could just email the document to the local print shop, email my scan of the 2 pages that needed replacing, and then they could print it all out and they could scan it on one of their big machines and they could compile it into a PDF and email it back to me. And then I'd email it to the lady,
Genius.
the new client.
Genius. I would have to do that because I can only scan one page at a time as well. I don't know how you scan a 15-page document into one PDF.
Well, you email it to your local print shop and they do it.
Yeah.
And guess what he charged me for it?
Oh, I'd like to know. £5?
£2.50. So I said, take £5 and buy yourself a drink because you just saved a couple of hours.
Bargain. You say, well, there we go. But in our, I'm always talking about the figures are in your body. In our body, yours and mine, that job was worth a £5.
Yeah, exactly. Now I've made friends in my local print shop who were a little bit astonished. They said, and the thing is, the client's over in Hove, and she said, why don't you just, print it out and staple it together and put it in an envelope and pop it over? No, thanks. That involves a travel, which takes up my time. And the print shop said, why don't you walk it round? I said, I'd much rather email it to you. My word of the week, Judith, for you is own it.
Oh.
So in last week we talked about the word podcast and how we came about, this podcast and everything. What does the words own it mean to you?
Take responsibility for and revel in and nail my colours to that mast. Live out loud. Live fully. Be unrepentantly who you are. Not without compromise, i.e., not to the exclusion of all else, not drive your car over other people, but, be, Marmite.
Marmite, yes. That leads us beautifully into the next section. But for me, I thought when I went away to Rich's Entrepreneur Transformation Weekend, I thought I did take 100% responsibility for my own success, as it were. That sort of took me from knowing it in an intellectual level to knowing it in my bones. And that, that's a very big difference, as anyone who knows what I'm talking about knows, and I'm sure you do. It's about knowing that nobody else, it's like we used to say, nobody else will ever care as much about your money as you do. Nobody else will ever care about as much about your business as you do, even your coach, although they come pretty close, I've got to say. And in a way, it's a freeing thing. It's a bit like, I've been getting into Nietzsche recently, the philosopher, German philosopher.
I do.
And I've watched an amazing thing on YouTube called An Introduction to Nietzsche, and it's all about how he foretold the demise of the church and our belief systems around that whole Christianity thing that was largely invented to keep people under control, I think. But how freeing it is when you accept and take it into your bones that you're the only person who's going to make it work and happen, because you stop waiting to be saved, you stop waiting for a knight in shining armour, women are particularly, we're brought up on the whole bloody princess thing. Excuse my language, we have to put explicit on this now. They're brought up to believe that there is going to be a prince or a knight in shining armour and someone's going to come and save them. And we labour under that delusion for quite a few years, I think, until we finally accept that it's, if it's to be, it's down to us. And if you can own it, it's a very freeing thing, because you're not waiting. It's a bit like, I suppose, being in a partnership with someone. You always there's always a little bit of element of, waiting for the other person to approve things or whatever. If you truly own it, your own success, you can just get on with it.
Well, it's interesting, because you could say our podcast is a partnership, but I own my part of it and you own your part of it, which is we turn up prepared for it.
Yes, and it's a good partnership because it's a strategic partnership rather than a dependent partnership.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's a nice little distinction for you. So own it. We like it. Who or what's impressed this week then?
I'm going to tell you about my client Angela, who lives in Brighton. She turned up about 10 days ago in quite a low place. And I taught her something that I'm sure she knew about already, but let's say I encouraged her to have another go at something she probably knew about. And we discussed this on one of our earlier podcasts, James Altucher's How to Be the Luckiest Man Alive. And the principles are around, when you're in a low place, creating and committing to a series of daily rituals in the self-care area, which you can choose for yourself, but they need to have a mind and a body and a spirit angle. So, you might choose exercise, you might choose eating right, you might choose uninterrupted good quality sleep, you might meditate or listen to something uplifting, you might journal every day in handwriting or online or something. But if you pick 3 of those and turn them into something that you'll commit to doing for yourself, for your mental, bodily and spiritual well-being every day, life changes. And she came back a week later. She was a completely different woman. And what she said was, I feel different about myself. And as soon as she felt different about herself, and she'd only done it for 7 days, and we've got to do this for the rest of our lives, but within 7 days there were possibilities in her life now, and that was the difference. And it had come from valuing herself enough to invest in herself. That little triangular combination needs only take 20 to 30 minutes a day.
So do you think it's because you value yourself, you become more attractive in metaphysical terms? So you're changing the energy around yourself so that other things happen?
I do think, a part of me thinks that, but I think that when you feel good about yourself, you feel strong and you feel that you can cope with what's going on. So it's alongside the opportunities turning up. Yes, there's a bit of magic because the opportunities turn up because you feel better about yourself, but also because you feel better about yourself, you feel able to attack things that perhaps you didn't. So you might feel able to ask somebody for something, or you might feel able to follow up with something, or make that one phone call that you didn't feel strong enough for last week. You can start to make your own magic as well as allow it.
I totally agree. And it's happened so many times in my life. And, rampant atheist that I am, I do think it's happening on a scientific level, but it definitely does happen. If you change the way you feel, you change the way you act, and that changes the results you get, in the same way we were talking about tag last week.
Yeah.
But it just is so true. And, we also talked about it last week when I was saying, when I was at the lowest point of my confidence, I couldn't give it away, my knowledge and skills. And then, only a couple of years later, people are, I just had an amazing client turn up and he wants to pay me for 8 hours and a day with me, and he's buying dinner,
Yeah. But I think the key thing here, when you ask me the question, what's impressed you, is that at an all-time low, she committed to doing that every day for 7 days and saw the difference. So it's actually quite difficult to commit to stuff like that when you're feeling low. Impressive bit here is that she did what I advised, and I knew what the result would be, but she did it. It's quite difficult when you're feeling low, isn't it? You just go, oh, I feel low. I feel low.
Yeah, to wallow. Yes.
Yeah.
It's easier to wallow than to trust and take action, that's for sure. Can be,
until you get bored with yourself, and then one day you just go, oh, sod it, I'm going to move on.
Yeah, that's happened to me on many occasions. I'm even boring myself now. In fact, My best friend Kim and I have got this thing where we're allowed to moan for a maximum of 15 minutes, and then the other person goes, "Okay, so what are you going to do about it?"
Yeah,
I think that's
you well know my friend Marion. She won't let me moan. She changes the subject or interrupts me, or she just won't allow mowing. She doesn't moaning, and she won't even say, right, that's enough moaning now. She'll just have her attention distracted by the dogs in Hyde Park or something else, and she goes, "Sorry to interrupt you." She's not sorry in the least. She wants me to stop moaning.
Sarah did a good one on me the other day. I was having a right old rant about something, and she said, "You sound just like Chloe did when she lay down on the rug and kicked her legs."
When she was 2 or something.
And I realised it was like a little sort of mental slap around the chops, just pull yourself together. For God's sake, you're acting like a 4-year-old. Funny. Yeah. And they get less often, these occasions, don't they, if you've got good friends around you. Jolt you
Yes,
out.
I think if somebody's drawing to your attention that, moaning isn't interesting to anybody, least of all you, then you are likely to move on a bit faster.
And it's interesting because you say you had a little rant earlier, but I think we haven't had many rants in this.
No.
Which leads me nicely on to who's impressed me this week, because it's our great friend Chris Barrow, who is just the most impressive person on so many levels. He's been through ups and downs. He travels the country. I follow him just because I'm fascinated by his travel arrangements. He gets up at 5 a.m. to run. He's got a lovely family who are starting to move into his business. And this week he's started the ironing board sagas. Have you caught any of that?
I'm reading his letters of an unreconstructed optimist or something. I can't remember what he calls them. I don't know what I've seen about the ironing board.
Well, check out his timeline on Facebook, because he's had this human humour I find fascinating. He went to I think it was a Hilton, because he often stays in Hiltons, because obviously there's loyalty points and all that stuff, and he couldn't find the ironing board, and he called the housekeeper, and she said, "Well, it's in the cupboard in the room," and he said, "Well, no, it's not, because I'm looking at the cupboard in the room. There is no ironing board in there." So she said, "Well, I'll come up to the room." And he said she came up to the room and she looked in the cupboard and there was no ironing board. Quite, and she looked at him as if he secreted it about his person somewhere or popped it in his suitcase or something. And then she called housekeeping, I think, and he came up and he looked in the cupboard and there was no ironing board. And then they went away, and I think he was there for 3 days. And on the last day, he leant against what looked like an ornamental cupboard where his coffee and kettle and everything was. He was putting on his shoes to go running, and of course this concealed cupboard door opened, and lo and behold, there's the ironing board.
So they were all looking, including 2 members of housekeeping, they were all looking in the wrong cupboard. And actually what that story reminds me of, what the old joke about there's a hole in the road and the police are looking into it. They were all looking into the cupboard, but it was the wrong cupboard.
And I think he went downstairs, and I think on his, as he checked out, he said, "Do please tell them that there isn't in fact an ironing board in that room, and it's in that room, but you might want to put a label on it." And it's gone on from there. I can't remember the next developments, but anyway, it's turning into the ironing board sagas as he moves around the country. So he's reporting now and taking photos of the different ironing board scenarios in the different hotels.
What a great use of social media. What fun.
It is fun, and it's engaging people in his travels and his life, but he's making people aware that he's doing all this travelling to go and work with clients, who are dental clients, obviously. My second ever coach, and he was the first person that taught me how to do all this online stuff, and he'd been taught by Guy Levine, of course, our mutual friend. And I just find it so inspiring that he's still so passionate. And his business is growing and growing, and he's got a team now, and he takes 12. He'll be planning his 12 weeks off next year, because that's the first thing he does. The rocks, pebbles, sand, and water stuff. He plans his 12 weeks off first, but then he works his arse off in between those 12 weeks, and he takes us all with him, metaphorically speaking, through his social media. Brilliant. I loved it. The ironing board sagas. So that's us this week then. So it's been another rocking episode, Judith, and we'll be going live on iTunes soon. So I'm really looking forward to that. Hope we make new and noteworthy.
Yeah, exciting.
Yeah, we'll have to drum up our tribes to go and have a listen, subscribe, and give us some reviews. But
yeah, no worries. I'm looking forward to that. Give me the sign when you're ready. I'm in.
I will. See you next week. You've been listening to Nicola Cairncross and Judith Morgan. The podcast is called Own It, Your Business and Your Life. Do come and visit us at ownitthepodcast.com. We love to hear your feedback. You can find out more about Judith and visit her on her website at judithmorgan.com, and you can find Nicola at nicolacairncross.com.